passed in other states and a lot of different municipalities. Also, the impact of HB2 economically is in the hundreds of millions of dollars when you start adding it up, and it can be even greater if it continues. So there was nothing unconstitutional about it. This was really a political partisan ploy by the Republican administration to throw this issue on the table and at the same time throw in things that were totally unrelated, like limiting the ability of local governments with a living wage. They also had thrown in the ability for anyone to sue in state court for any type of discrimination, taking away a right that we have had for decades. So HB2 is going to be overturned by the Supreme Court when it gets there. I think we could do a lot better for our state by just admitting that it's wrong right now, we don't need it, and let's repeal it.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Edwards.
I guess I can't buy your cards now. You're out. Right? February 22nd, 2016, Charlotte City Council passed an ordinance, a bathroom ordinance, that essentially says it is unlawful to put a sign on a bathroom. That it would be illegal to distinguish what that bathroom is for, which in effect allows any person, any gender identity to go into any facility, any locker room that had a toilet or a shower, etc. The North Carolina State Legislature acted quickly. My Monday morning quarterbacking says, had I been in the legislature now, I might have paused and approached it differently. But it did need to take place. We have lost our mind and our sense of common sense and decency in just allowing anybody to go into any bathroom or locker room. And that is effectively what the Charlotte bathroom ordinance did. I don't want my daughter or granddaughter to have to look up in a shower or locker room and see some man walking in. The thing that I find that is truly sad is, while this is such a emotionally charged subject, most North Carolinians were behind our legislature until we realized that now we're going to lose some basketball. I mean, what does that really say about us? The real effect of House Bill 2 on the economy has been minimal. Unless Charlotte is willing to first repeal their act, House Bill 2 needs to stay in place. And what I would say to the companies that don't come into North Carolina or have chosen to pull out, or the teams that have chosen to not play here, fine. But if you're about morals and you want to bring your family here and make sure that, I was in the middle of the sentence, thank you, and make sure that your family is protected and that they feel safe, then by all means, bring them to North Carolina.
I'm sorry. Are you okay over there?
He's okay.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Bossert, it's your turn.
Well, we have really taken this discussion into the toilet, haven't we? I hope that lightens the mood a little bit. I think HB2 needs to be repealed, and it needs to be repealed immediately. From my point of view, HB2 is a Trojan horse. And I'll tell you why I think it's a Trojan horse. It was a non-issue, really, before Charlotte passed that ordinance. It was a non-issue after the ordinance was passed. It became an issue when HB2 was written. I'll tell you one of my biggest objections. I have two major objections to HB2. And let me start with the one that just overwhelms me sometimes. I am a real believer in the fact that our local communities ought to have the right to pass legal and constitutional ordinances, and that those ordinances be respected. That the voters in that community can come back if they're not happy with the ordinance And they can vote their people out of office if they want to. Local people should have a right to make decisions for their local communities. And over and over and over again, this legislature has reached its hands into local decisions, and I think that is just plain immoral. It is not the way North Carolina should be working, at least not from my point of view. Jason Chappell's here in the back of the room. He's a commissioner in Transylvania County, and I don't think he would like somebody coming in and telling him how to do county business in Transylvania County. But it happens all the time, doesn't it? Yeah, you can shake your head. Yes, you know it's true. I've heard y'all whining about it. The other part of this is I believe in equal protection under the law. That is a constitutional promise that we make here in North Carolina, that all of our citizens are guaranteed equal protection under the law regardless of their gender, regardless of their preferences. It makes no difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a question about school boards and partisanship and local control. And Ms. Kopoloff, we'll start with you. In recent months, there has been local controversy about whether the school board candidates should be elected in nonpartisan or partisan elections. Please explain your position on which way school board candidates should be elected.
I believe school board candidates should be nonpartisan. We don't need partisan politics in looking after our education for our children. We have nonpartisan school boards. I know in Transylvania we've had one up until just, well, we still have it. It will be there until 2018, and it's worked fine. The real issue that we should be concerned about with the school board is electing the best qualified person who will do the best job to ensure our children get a good education. It doesn't matter what political party they're from. And one of the things that by making a school board election partisan, what it does, it also eliminates the ability for people who are unaffiliated to run for school board. And in an awful lot of our counties, that's 1/3 of our people. And so that really disenfranchises 1/3 of the population from really being able to serve on that type of a board. I have talked with people that are on the school board. I've talked with school superintendents. I've talked with people around the counties. And I have not found support where anybody really wants to change to a partisan school board election. And I know in Transylvania County, we just recently had that get passed. And I think that's one of the things that we have to be very, very careful, that when we are there representing the people in Raleigh, that we do not take our personal preferences and try to impose those on people. And so I am very strongly opposed to making school boards partisan. I think we need to keep it nonpartisan, and we need to keep the best qualified person and get political parties out of running our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards?
This is one of those subjects where I'm going to say I don't have a firm position. I will say that I understand the folks that I have heard make an argument against the partisan election. But quite honestly, we're talking about one situation here where Representative Chris Whitmire passed a piece of legislation back in the short session. I have not had a conversation with Representative Whitmire to understand why he made the decision that he did to introduce that legislation. Before I took a position, I would want to hear that side of the story. I certainly am okay and agree that folks should understand the politics of the person that they're about to elect. It's an election, for crying out loud. How can you not have some partisanship in an election? But as far as saying I would vote this way or I would vote that way, I've not asked all the questions yet to be able to accurately answer that.
Thank you. Mr. Bosser?
I know I'm hammering an old nail here, but to me, once again, this is a situation where our state legislature has reached into local decision-making, and I think it's a mistake to do that. I believe that the people of Transylvania County ought to be able to decide for themselves whether they want their school boards to be partisan or not. And they have that opportunity. I would also point out that in doing so, Mr. Whitmire has made it incredibly more difficult for unaffiliated candidates to run for office. People who are not Democrats, people who are not Republicans. This decision has made it challenging for people who are not in a partisan political party to reach out to that position. I think that's a mistake. I don't think it was thought out well. I also believe I read in the Transylvania Times that nobody on the school board made such a request of Mr. Whitmire, that he considered that. And I think I also read that the county commission in Transylvania County didn't go calling up Chris Whitmire and say, gee, we have a problem on the school board, we need you to change that. And I don't know what his motivation was, but I don't think it was, well, I don't think it was helping the people of Transylvania County continue a very healthy school board. And so for that reason, I think it's a mistake to make those positions, school boards or city council for that matter, partisan positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Henson?
I personally see both sides of the coin. I understand where Representative Whitmire was coming from with wanting people to have a better understanding of where these school board candidates stand on some of the issues. But as a parent who's going to send their child to a public school, I could care less what their party affiliation is. I want to know what they're going to do for my son in that school. I want to know how they're going to improve the education in Transylvania County, Buncombe County, Henderson County, Onslow County, wherever. You know, I want to see what they're going to do for the schools, not what their party affiliation is. So that's my personal stance on it. I understand both sides of the coin, but if it were my decision, I wouldn't have done it.
Thank you.
Next question is from Mr. Edwards. Gun legislation is a national issue, one where each state's legislature can take initiatives to protect citizens' rights while protecting lives. Do you think the values of rights and safety are compatible? And if so, what reforms and/or legislation would you support?
I would support the legislation to follow the Second Amendment. I am endorsed by the NRA as an A candidate. I believe that not only is it our right, but it's our duty to protect ourselves and our family. I will protect those rights.
All right. Mr. Bossert?
I'd like to start off by saying that when we candidates run for office, a lot of people send us surveys. And the NRA is one such organization. They send out surveys. On the cover letter of their survey, in the cover letter of their survey, they say that to not respond to the survey could be construed as hostility towards the Second Amendment. And I said to myself when I read that, I said, Norm, you're running for state office. Are you already going to allow the NRA to blackmail you in your positions? And I was really troubled by that, so I refused to fill it out. The truth of the matter is I support Second Amendment rights, but I also support the sanity of saying that there are some people who really should not have weapons in this country. And I think we need to be sure that, I mean, we're worried about voting and voter registration and IDs. I'm concerned about the mental health of some of the people who have weapons and whether or not they're capable of making sound decisions. The other part about this is that, and this is the frightening part to me, 60% of the gun deaths in this country are suicides. Are you all aware of that? 60% are suicides, not murders in the streets of Chicago and other places. It means that we're putting weapons in the hands of people who probably would be well served by not having those weapons. As you all know, I'm sure you all know, that the decision to commit suicide is often a rash, last-minute decision. Wouldn't it be nice if we could save 60% of the people who are killed with guns every year by being sure that they don't have those guns? It's our responsibility to them and to posterity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Henson?
I'm a firm supporter of the Second Amendment. I too was endorsed by the NRA. I believe that every American has the right to self-protection, not only from the thieves in the night, but from a tyrannical government. You got to think when the Constitution was written, we had just come out of a Revolutionary War fighting a tyrannical government, and our founding fathers found it necessary to